Hello and welcome. This is Working Class to World Class. But before we go any further, I do have a little favour of you. If you could hit that follow or subscribe button, then that would be a massive help. Thank you. In this episode, we turn our attention to the world of sport, where I catch up with a well-known personality who managed to turn his football passion into a successful career. We explore, how can you go from that ordinary working class background to go on to create one of the largest fan club channels in the world, which gives so much back to its core fan base? Well, it's an inspiring story, it's told from the heart, and it is told by a really fantastic person. Breaking through the barriers of adversity. I'm Lynn Lester, and this is Working Class to World Class. So, Robbie, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm so happy that you're with me today, joining me all the way from Scotland. Where are you?
I'm down in London at the moment, at my studios, which is based probably about 10 minutes walk away from Arsenal's football ground. Yeah, we got our studios here. So yeah, I'm in London at the moment. It's a bit miserable here though today, a bit drizzly.
Really? Is Scotland's the same? Although it was very sunny yesterday, so people were like, oh my God, it's sunny. It was like, a miracle, but never mind. We're not here to talk about the weather. Well, not quite yet. So, but obviously, a lot of people is going to know you. I mean, it goes without saying, but for people that are tuning in, they're like, who is this cool Robbie guy? Do you want to just give everybody an update on who you are and what you do?
Well, my name's Robbie Lyle. I run a football channel on YouTube and many other social media platforms called AFTV, which used to be known as Arsenal Fan TV. It's AFTV. I also got a channel called DR Sports, which is a general football channel, and some other channels as well. We're just about to start an F1 channel. But I'd say basically my business is football content, but by using social media rather than the sort of traditional media outlets. So, and I'm known for, speaking to fans, particularly Arsenal fans, which is AFTV's an Arsenal channel, and sort of built my reputation from interviewing fans after games to get their opinion on their football club.
But that's pretty cool. I mean, it's funny because people who are football fans, I mean, really to get to immerse yourself in such a way, I just think it's just so cool how you've done it. And we're going to find out in a minute how you did do it, because I don't know when you were a kid, if you ever thought in a million years you'd be doing what you're doing now, did you?
No, I didn't. I mean, I couldn't have done it when I was a kid because the technology just didn't exist. And all our football sort of came from the traditional sources of, whether BBC, ITV, then later on Sky. But what the technology of social media has allowed me to do is, and many other individuals now, is to be able to start our own sort of media companies to do with sport. So, yeah, I think when I was a kid, I would have loved to have been on TV talking about football, but I just couldn't see a way to do that.
No, technology is amazing now. I mean, even you look at AI and you think, oh my goodness, what is next for us? Because every decade, I think it can't get any more advanced, and then something else happens. I remember going back to the years when my mum and dad, or especially my mum, couldn't work the video recorder. And they'd be like, you have to press the 2 buttons for it to record. And I'd be like, oh my God, they're so old. And now I'm like, what's that? So yeah, no, I feel the same.
Every day, every day, especially, in this business, every day there's something new. Like you said, AI, that's, something that's really coming up strong. The metaverse, every day there's new technology.
Yeah, it's random. Well, it's going to accelerate even more. But for now, we're going to accelerate back the way, because obviously the whole ethos of what we're here to talk about today is working class to world class, about how can you come from, I guess, a really humble start in life to fulfilling your dreams like you have, and you're known worldwide. So if we go back to, I don't know if you were ever called wee Robbie or little Robbie or just Robbie, but when you were a kid, like, where were you brought up?
Yeah, I was born in London. Grew up for most of my childhood in Luton, which is a town just about 30 miles outside of London. That's where I went to school. My parents, both Jamaican, came to this, excuse me, came to the UK in the 60s and were living in London. And then eventually my dad was able to get money together to buy a house, and he bought a house in Luton. And yeah, that's where I grew up. My childhood went to school there till when I got to sort of my teens, I moved back to London. Yeah, so I went to school there, and yeah, it was a working class background. I really admire my parents, because when they came to this country, basically, and they called them the Windrush generation. Although my dad always used to remind me that he didn't come here on a boat, he come here by the plane, right? So he always used to make sure he stated that. But basically I admired them because they came here really with nothing. They come from a very, very poor background in Jamaica. They came to England to work in the services sort of industry, and they brought up 4 kids, me and my 3 brothers. As I said, my dad managed to, through his hard work, buy his own house. He worked as a plasterer all his life. And yeah, I just look at them and think, and I think it's where I get a lot of my sort of entrepreneurial spirit from, even though they weren't entrepreneurs. But I just look at it and say they were brave, because to take that step, to leave from Jamaica, to come to England, which would have been a totally different climate. At that time, there was a lot of racism that existed. They don't know really what they're coming into. That took a lot of bravery to make that step. And they did that, and then they brought us up. So I'm really proud of they both passed away now, but I'm very proud of how they brought us up.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm sure it goes without saying they're obviously very proud, and I'm sure they would be beaming right now to see what you've achieved in life. And so you were saying that you were brought up with your siblings, so it's all boys. Oh my God, my niece has got 4 boys, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know how she does it. It was that chaos in the house, 4 of you.
Yeah, it was. It was pure chaos in the house. 4 boys, but we all, we all got on. We just all had our normal, and we all still get on. But we just all had our normal sibling rivalries and that, and we were all like mad into sports. So I think that's where I get a lot of it, because we all did so many sports. We played football, cricket, rugby, everything, and we were always discussing sports. We were always talking about football, and then my dad as well was really, really into sports as well, and really, really into his football, cricket. He always watching it. So we, I think where I get that side of things regarding knowledge of football and knowledge of sports is from that environment of growing up around it, every day talking about it, every day arguing about this and that to do with football. I remember my mum always used to be saying, "Can't you lot talk about something else?" But yeah, that's where it all comes from.
It makes sense, because from my family we've got quite a lot of boys, a lot of nephews and brothers. I'm the youngest of 7, and 3 of them were brothers. And so, but yeah, football was literally the chat, especially amongst my nephews. That's all the blooming talk about. And I think I've just about understood the offside rule, but that's pretty much it. My knowledge is slightly limited, but yeah, I get it. When my son used to play football, I'd go and watch him, and I'd be shouting at the sidelines as if I really knew what I was talking about, but I was so into it. So I think I did understand most of it. And so were you the youngest or oldest, or where did you sit in with your brothers?
I was second. So I've got an older brother and then 2 younger brothers. So I was second in line. So yeah.
That's cool. And did you all support the same team at the time?
We did. We're all Arsenal supporters.
Oh, okay.
So that was good that we all supported the same team. But then it also meant that we were always arguing about that as well. Who should start? Why is he playing? Why is he not playing? He's my favourite player. He's not, So
That is so cool. And so see, you mentioned a minute ago, and it would be amiss of me not to bring it up, in terms of racism, obviously when your parents came to the country, what was it like for you growing up? Was it still similar, or was it much more improved by then?
Oh yeah, I think racism, would have improved from when they first arrived. But growing up, I'm talking about like the late 80s, the 90s. Yeah, racism was rife. When I first started going to football, for instance, it was common, absolutely common. I mean, for people to racially abuse you at grounds, on the terraces, all the time, and get away with it. It wasn't like now where somebody could get a ban. They get away with it. And you go to a lot of times to the police, and they weren't much better. I mean, there was a big problem, in particularly in London, with the police as well. So grew up around a lot of racism. I think it was very common in those times, and very much more in your face than it is now. We had to really, really battle that, So yeah, I've seen and been through a lot of it. I remember like even just being in London and just getting stopped a lot on the tube, getting stopped on the road, and that, for no reason. So grew up around it. Definitely grew up around it, and it has improved a lot, but we've still got ways to go.
Yeah. Did you know it's still? I just find it really difficult even to this day, because when we grew up, again, working class, we were always told and always brought up obvious stuff. People are people, and it doesn't matter about the color of your skin. It doesn't matter where you're from. And we were always taught to live our life of grace and be nice. You treat people the way you would expect to be treated yourself. And so for me, when I hear all these stories, not that I live in a sheltered part of the world, I just think, oh my God, like it's almost unbelievable. But I'm not naive to it. I totally get it, but it is pretty disgusting, really. And I suppose in that era, at least you had the safety of your brothers. So I guess, there's a lot of people that have to deal with that stuff themselves. So at least that's, something to be thankful for, I guess, at that era, at that time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and then what as well, like a lot of my friends that I grew up with, and some of my white friends, they were like in Luton, they were Irish. There's a big Irish community there, and they used to get a lot of stick as well, and they used to get a lot of sort of racism back in the day, Irish people as well. So I don't know, so we seem to connect very well together, and so yeah, it was good on that level,
Yeah.
But I think at football it was terrible in those days. It was really, really bad. And it seemed to be one of those sort of focal point areas where the racist groups targeted. They knew that they could go to football and they could target young, males, white males there, and try and get them involved in their National Front movements and BNP movements and stuff like that through, the hooliganism stuff and all that. So it was a big, big problem at football. I even did a documentary that was on ITV where it's on that subject of what it used to be like and how things have improved, but how we've still got a long way to go. But when you sort of look at that documentary and some of the people that I was interviewing, I mean, there was a Chelsea fan in particular that I interviewed. I mean, Chelsea used to be really bad back in the day. And, he was still tearful about it now, because they are things, sometimes people look on it and think, oh yeah, it's just they called you a name, or they just get on with it. But it does have scars, I mean? It does have scars on people, I mean? And when this guy started remembering back some of the issues and problems back in the day, he was tearful about it, So it was a massive problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In Scotland, I think for us, it was the Old Firm, right? So every time that was on, you were never allowed to go to Glasgow, just in case it kicked off. But, now, as you say, there's bans, there's lots of different things. And so I guess, when you're growing up, obviously you've got that to contend with, the kind of racist side of things. But then obviously you're a working class kid yourself. So, did you kind of ever go on holidays, or what was your kind of life like as a child?
Yeah, I didn't really go on. I say this to my kids all the time. I go, listen, we never went on holiday, right? Growing up, my parents never really had money to go on holiday, so we had we just used to, like, when the summer used to come along. I remember this massive park near where we lived, and we just used to go over there and play football, play cricket, and spend all day there. And that was our summer, and we absolutely loved it. We didn't. We'd see like some of our friends sometimes saying, "Oh, we're going on a holiday," and we'd be like, "Oh." But it didn't really register with me until later on, because we never really went on a holiday. We just spent the summer at home and just like going over the park and just having lots of fun on a day-to-day basis. And
Yeah.
that's what I say to my kids now. I go, when you lot go on a holiday and stuff like that, you're a lot lucky. We never had that.
No, never.
My parents just didn't have the money to take 4 boys away from on holiday. We just didn't do it.
No, it's almost impossible, isn't it? I remember we used to go out, crack of dawn, but we would never come back until it got dark. And
That's
you were just
exactly us.
all day.
We'd be out all day, playing football, playing cricket, playing whatever, and just come back at night, when it got dark.
Well, we would come back for a
Come
piece
back
and
at
jam.
lunchtime to get something to eat, and then go again, So
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying. We used to come back for we called it a piece and jam, so a jam sandwich, but for us it was called a piece and jam. So we were allowed a piece and jam and some diluting juice, which I think you guys call squash. That was about it. Then get out again, get out. So it sounds to me as if it was like lots of fun, right? You've got your brothers, you're having, as you say, you only know what you know, right?
Yeah.
So for you, that was pretty standard, pretty normal. And so at school then, like, what were you like as a kid?
At school, I think, I always get told off for being very chatty, but I did pretty well at school. I did okay. My parents really pushed us at school. We couldn't come home we could come home with a bad report, but there were consequences. They didn't. My dad used to say, "There's no compromise on school," and that's what he used to be like. And he was pretty draconian with it, pretty harsh on it. But actually, it worked, because all of us sort of come out, all me and my other brothers, we all come out of school with decent qualifications. You know what I mean? So at school, I was, school was good. It was just that we had to make it. And I remember my mum used to be a cleaner at the school, right? When I went to secondary school, she was a cleaner at the school. So she'd always be getting. She was almost like a member of the MI5 or something, and that she'd always be getting intel off of all of the teachers and that. She got to know them all. So if I got into trouble, or my other brother got into trouble, or anything like that, or detention or anything, she'd know before we even told her. And then she'd tell my dad, and then, oh my God, it's like...
That was it. That was you.
Yeah, my dad was a real disciplined guy. So like, if he knew that you was messing around at school, then you wouldn't be going nowhere. He'd be like, yeah, Robbie, all them football things and that you've been doing, just tell him you won't be coming there for the next month. And he'd be like, what? And he said, no. He goes, I heard about the detention you got, and that goes. So he goes, I told you, lot, if you're going to go to school and mess around, then you're not playing football, you're not playing this, you're not doing. And he always stuck to it as well. He's not like me with my kids now. I'd try to do that, but then I break. You know what I mean? Sometimes I break. And I was like, oh, all right. But my dad, he didn't break. He had old school sort of discipline that he brought from Jamaica, and he didn't break. And he'd be like, nope. And you knew there's not even a point of asking for a reprieve or anything. So that kind of forced us to, to work hard at school.
Why beg?
My dad, if you come home from school, you got to do your homework before you do anything else. You couldn't even turn the TV on. The homework better be done first. He was like that, So with my mum as well, also like that as well. So that sort of discipline did help to keep me focused, and even though sometimes I'd stray off, but keep me focused and make sure I did well at school.
It brought you back in the straight and narrow. I think the thing is as well, the fact that they had come over from Jamaica, as you said, they came over, it was a different climate, different culture, different everything really. So they obviously had done that so that when they had kids, it was to give them the future that they really wanted for them. So you kind of you totally understand it. And obviously there's a respect element, you know. I don't know, how old are your parents when you were born? Were they young or old? Or?
They would have been like in their, they'd have been like probably late 30s, 40s. So, you know, they were very, and they, you know, their traditional Jamaican discipline they brought with them.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
Good, no wonder you and your brothers got on. It doesn't sound as if you would have got away with it if you hadn't.
No, you couldn't get away with it. Not my dad, man. He knew everything, man. And as I said, my mum she had all the intel at school. You know, I mean, she knew everything already before we,
It's so funny. But where we live in Clydebank, I always remember going out, my mum would say, now be on your best behaviour because I'll find out before you even get back here if you've done anything wrong.
That used to be the case with me as well.
Yeah, and I believed her.
Get home. You knew everything. I used to hate when she worked at that school as a cleaner, I'll tell you.
That's so funny. And so when you left school, like, what kind of grades were they at the time? And then what did you then go on and do? Did you go to college or uni, or what was your plan?
Yeah, I left school. I think I had 5 GC. Well, I think they weren't even GCSEs at that time. It was GCE or something. I had 5 O levels. That's what they used to call it then. So I had 5 O levels when I left school. I went to sixth form and I was doing A levels, and with the plan to go on to university. But then I left before the end of it because I wanted to work. I didn't really want to go to university. Didn't really appeal to me. I wanted to work, and I got a job as work. My first ever job I got was working in the civil service when I say civil service, it was a housing. What was it called again? DHSS. And I worked at a DHSS office in Notting Hill in London. Sort of the Ladbroke Grove end of Notting Hill, it was quite rough. Yeah. But that was sort of like my first job, and I worked as a clerical officer. So that was sort of like my first job because I didn't want to. I was like, I want to work now. I don't want to go to no university. So my other brothers did actually go to university. I was the only one who didn't go.
Look at you now. So I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because young kids, people sort of, especially in the corporate world, make you think you have to go to uni and you have to do all this. And actually, as you've proven, depending on what you want to do and where your dream and heart is, then you don't really need to do that. So that sounds quite cool that you went down that route. And I guess, see, when you started earning, did it feel as if you were like a millionaire? Because obviously, if you're living this working class life, and you know, what was it like to sort of start getting money?
You know, I remember I got my first wage packet. I thought I was a millionaire, right? And then when I started to have to pay, them times I was still living at home. I'd moved out. I've moved back to London now. So I thought I'm a millionaire, but then once I started paying rent, electric, gas, and that, I quickly realised that I'm still where I am, still the same person. You know, so but yeah, I did like it wasn't that I was desperate to move out or anything, but I just liked the independence of it all. And in those times I was sort of really getting into music. I loved reggae music, and my brother used to have like what they call a sound system, and the sound system was growing, and I always used to be around it. And I started like MCing on the sound system, like picking a mic up and MCing, and discovered that I had a bit of a talent for it. And that started to really, really take off as well. And, you know, so being sort of independent, living on my own, it means that I could do a lot of, I work during the day, and then in the evening times, especially on the weekends, I'll be out, you know, with the sound system, and then eventually going on to doing some performing and stuff like that. So.
Oh, that's so cool. So, see, when you say performing, what do you mean? Like, was it like DJing, or was it what?
So I was like it was like a reggae artist. So I used to first of all, I used to do it like on sound system. So I'd take the microphone, and I'd do what they called MCing.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I started to, you know, become more and more well known in that sort of UK reggae industry. And then I started making records and stuff like that. And I had one that went to #1 in the UK reggae charts. So that was pretty cool. And then when I did that, now that tune sort of took off, I started like, you know, doing touring around, first of all, around the UK. And then I started doing stuff around Europe, and, you know, I did a couple of bits in Jamaica. And that's when that actually is when I first started traveling, started like traveling around.
That is so cool. So let's go back a minute, right? So you've just hit me with this. I'm like, really, #1?
No, I've done it with a lot of madness. I have.
I'm going to go and look for this now. But so how did you get into that? So you're obviously, you know, you've got the sound system, you're doing MC, and did you just like literally go and knock on doors and ask if you could come to do some stuff, or how did they open the door to you?
No, so what it is, and my brother and his friends, they had what we call a reggae sound system that they started. They just started a little small thing, and they just used to play at parties and things like that. Because in those days, you used to have a lot of sort of almost what they called like parties in houses and little halls and things like that, and people would come, and especially with reggae, and they'd string up a sound system, and, you know, you play music, and you'd have MCs who, like, you know, MC over the music and that, and introduce it and everything. And I just discovered that I had a bit of a talent for that. I really loved it. I always used to listen to a lot, and I discovered I had a talent for that. And then as my brother's sound system started to grow and grow and grow, and I was like the main guy on it, because I sort of started just from scratch MCing. I just started to sort of build up a reputation where people were saying, "Oh, you know what? He's really good. This guy's good." Until eventually, like, a couple of record labels, the UK reggae labels, approached me and said, "We want you to do a tune." And I did a tune called "Proud to Be Black." That was a tune at the time, and it went to #1. It went to #1 in the UK reggae charts. So that was a big moment for me. And then it enabled me, after say this was over a period of about 4 years, and then I left my job and started sort of concentrating on reggae and performing and that, like, full time. And I did it full time for a good few years.
That is pretty cool. That's really cool. Congratulations. I had no idea. And
Yeah.
so do you think, as a child, do you think you would have had the confidence then, or did you build the confidence to do that kind of stuff in later life?
I think I sort of built the confidence. I don't know. I was always quite a confident kid. But I just didn't know I had that in me. It was just something I just discovered over a period of time. I just enjoyed it. And then, you know, once I started realizing I was good at it, I was thinking, you know what, I think I could, you know, you hear other people, and I think I'm better than him. I reckon it could do something as good as that. You know what I mean? So your confidence starts to build and stuff like that. And then you're performing in front of people, so your confidence builds again. So I think sometimes as well, you just realize you've got a talent for something that you didn't know before. It's really weird I don't know, it's really weird how it happens, but you just sometimes discover that unexpectedly you got a talent for something. Something that for other people may be a bit difficult to do, or you find it quite easy, and you realize that I've got quite. And if you then add hard work to that, you know what I mean, you can really start to make something with it.
Yeah, as I say, it's a pretty cool talent to have. And then, you know, I love the fact that you then chucked in the job because you then found your passion, something that you really enjoyed, made you smile, you get out of bed for it, and you had tons of fun doing it. So, you know, I can imagine traveling around the world, like, you know, having not ever done that before. Did that feel alien to you?
No, it was cool. I mean, because now I started to realize, I'm like, I should have done this ages ago, you know, because you start to travel around, and then the good thing about it is that people are paying for it as well. So, you know, so yeah, no, it was brilliant. It was a brilliant time. You know what I mean? Like, I remember, like, sometimes we do tours of like Europe, And you know, I wasn't the main act, but I'd be like, you know, it's the second before the main. Although later on I did do some main ones, and it was just so cool. You know what I mean? It really opened my eyes to life, to people, because you go into all these different places. Like I remember the first time I went to like Germany to do. I said to the guy, "Who in Germany is going to know anything about reggae?" He goes, "Yeah, Robbie." He goes, "Reggae music's big in Germany." I go, "Serious?" I said, "Yeah, man." He goes, "They all know your music," and I go, "You reckon?" And then when I got over there and I saw the crowds, they were bigger than the stuff we were doing in England, and they knew all the words, and I was just like, "Wow," you know what I mean? And so it really starts to open your eyes. You know what I mean? You know, it's something that I've kept to this day. When I always say, you know, what I mean, I like to go and discover things for myself. I never try to stereotype people. I never try to sort of look at things and think they won't understand this or they won't get that, because you just don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
God, and I think the thing is as well, it's, you know, a lot of people I've spoke to in this podcast series, a lot of it's about who you're hanging out with as well. So it's hanging out with different, you know, and again, your kind of people that accept you for being who you are. And I think, you know, especially when you live in a working class area, to travel the world, especially, and hang out with people of different cultures and attitudes and their really open-mindedness. So I guess, you know, that was probably, that accelerated, I guess, your thinking and how you then took on
100%.
life. Yeah.
100%, yeah.
And do you, so once you've done all that, so like, I'm just picturing the scene. I can imagine, we can talk off camera. You can tell me how great it was, but I can imagine how, you know, it was a life of Riley, I guess. It was probably pretty good fun. And so where did you go from there? Did you do that for quite a long time before you took your next step?
Yeah, I did that for quite a long time. And then I sort of transitioned from performing and everything and then I worked on the radio for a bit. I had my own sort of radio show um, on it was on the local, it's BBC Bedfordshire. So I should travel back and do that show. And I did that show for quite a while and that was successful. But then after a while with music, it started to fizzle out. It started to, you know, music's you know, it's a real trend game that then something else starts to come along. And I started to realize that, you know, that's a bit in the decline now. And I'm like, I need to work. I need to start getting, because your money starts to get a little less and less. And I'm like, I need to start working again. And so I went back sort of into working within housing. And then I remember I used to see all the surveyors who worked in the housing, company I worked. They always used to come in all dressed in suits and that, looking cool. And then when we were all in the office stuck there working, they'd always sort of be in and out the office, getting into their cars, gone, come back later on. But, okay, you know what? I'd like to do that job, man. You know what I mean? So I remember the company I worked for at the time, they used to do this scheme where you could, if you'd worked there for a while, which at that time I worked there for about a good 3 years or so, they really liked me and everything. They did this scheme where you could kind of retrain to do something else. So when it sort of came to my appraisal and they was asking me, I said, I'd like to retrain as a surveyor. So they said, well, that's completely different to what you're kind of doing now. So that's not part of the retraining structure for what you want to do. And I was going, yeah, but that's what I want to do. I think I could do that job. You know what I mean? The surveyors a lot of times come to me for help on certain things, problem solving and things like that. I've spoken to some of them as well. I feel it's a job that I could do. And then they were saying to me, nah, you're not going to. And then I sort of called their bluff because I knew they liked me. And I said to them, right, well, if I can't do that training, then I'll probably look to leave. And then they then about a week later came back to me and said, all right, you'll be able to do the training. So then I started studying. So I had to go to like study at uni, like a day release thing. It was tough, I'll tell you, like, because I hadn't studied for so long. I found that really tough. But then I started to be now training as a surveyor. Then there was an opening that came up for an assistant surveyor. I applied for that and I got that job. And then after about a year or so, even before I finished doing all my studying, they promoted me to a full surveyor. So then I started working as a surveyor for for the housing association. Yeah, you know what I mean? And it's building surveyor. So I sort of retrained into that.
God, that's so different. Like, you picture the scene, you're gigging around the world, you're partying, and now you're a surveyor. I mean, not that surveyors don't party. I'm not saying that to all the surveyors watching. But that must have been, I mean, that was quite cute. And was your mum and dad still alive at that point? When
Yeah, they're still alive, and they were saying, yeah, well done for doing that. Because I think they always sort of like of the thing, yeah, can't you just get a regular, normal job? But then even when I was doing the surveying and that, I was still doing little things on the side. Like I'd be doing things like promoting events, because I still had that music thing in me. So I sort of moved into a thing where I promote events, I promote shows and promote little things at clubs and that, you know. And yeah, then I was doing the surveying for a good few years, probably about 5 years, 6 years or so. But I always kind of had this sort of thing in me. I was like, yeah, this is a good job and that, but I want to do more. I still want to have my own business, and I always sort of wanted to do something within football, because football and music. Those two things are my loves. Supported Arsenal all my life. I was like, and then I had a friend who me and him used to go to way back when we used to go to Highbury, and he'd started a company called, he started a football channel called AFTV, which is like a boxing channel. And one week he said to me, he goes, oh, Robbie, he goes, my camera guy can't turn up. So can you come with me to this boxing fight? Because what he used to do, he'd go to boxing fight and he'd interview fighters and promoters and stuff like that and post it on his YouTube channel. So he goes, can you come with me and hold the camera? So I said, I don't know nothing about cameras. He goes, you don't have to. He goes, I'll focus it and that. All you got to do is just hold it straight. I said, all right. So I went with him and we went to a show. I remember it was up in Liverpool. And I saw him in action, saw what he was doing and everything. I was like, do you know what? This could work for football. So I remember I said to him, I go, do you ever thought of doing something like this for football? So he said, yeah, but Robbie, you'd never be able to get the players. You know, you haven't got the rights to football and stuff like that. It's just so much of a minefield. And I said, yeah, but what about, forget the players, what if we interview fans? Because I've always had this thing in my head that nobody ever asks the fans their opinion. You know what I mean? We always hear from all the pundits, we hear from all the ex-players, so-called experts, and sometimes some of them haven't even been to games. Yeah, they used to play for Arsenal, or yeah, they used to play for this team or that team, but that was their job. They're not invested in it as deep as fans. So I was going, what about the fans? He's going, I don't think that will work. And he didn't really, plus as well, he was really busy doing what he was doing, because he was doing quite well with this thing. So I just decided that, you know what, I'm going to develop out this idea, which I kind of did. I went back to him again, asked him if he'd be interested. He said no, which again, I was a bit crestfallen because I never have a clue how to film or edit or anything like that. And in the end, I just decided I'm just going to do it on my own. So I just said, just going to try it. And then I reached out to a friend of mine who, when I was doing my promotions and stuff like that, this guy used to design flyers for me and build websites and things like that. And I said to him, could you build a website for me for this idea that I've got? Because I want to start doing this thing called Arsenal Fan TV, where I interview fans and stuff like that. And then he came back to me about a day later and he goes, Robbie, that idea you got, that's a good little idea, you know. He goes on YouTube, he goes, I know how to do sort of filming and I know how to do editing, because I sometimes work part-time at a film studio that does adverts, right? So I said, yeah. So he said, yeah, I wouldn't mind joining up with you to do this idea. So I said, yeah. So then I joined up with him, and then we decided we were going to do our first game. We went we filmed the game. It was Arsenal versus Tottenham. We put the videos out, and you know, they weren't brilliant, the quality and all that, because we had to borrow all the equipment. We borrowed a mic and a camera and everything from the film studio that he worked at. But when it came out and people saw it, they liked it. They were like, hey, this is pretty cool, you know what I mean? And people started sharing it. And I remember like our first videos we did, we were getting like 30 views, 40, hundreds. We high-fiving each other. We go, hey, this is all right. And then at first I was just going to do all the home games for Arsenal. But then the first week went well. So I said, let's see what an away game is going to be like. So the next week we went and did an away game, played against Aston Villa. And that one went even better because people were saying, oh, we never knew what it was like. Because it's almost like we were giving people an insight into fans, how they travel to games, how they watch it, how they feel. So people really, really enjoyed that. And then after that, I said, you know what, we're going to do every single game from now on, home and away. And I remember my friend who was you know, doing the camera and that, like he worked full time as well. He's like, Robbie, how are we going to do this? First of all, we both work full time. Secondly, where are we going to get the money from? Because it's quite a lot of money, tickets, travel. I said, you know what? I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're doing it. And then we just, from that day, that was in 2012, I started it and continued it ever since. From that day where it was just two of us, and I say for about the first 3 years of it, first 3 to 4 years, it was still just two of us, just going to games, speaking to fans, uploading. I mean, remember, we're still working. So sometimes, like, you could have a game like Man United away, Burnley away, these far places. We'd go there, especially when they had the midweek games. You know, the game finishes, you know, it's like 8 o'clock kickoff, game finishes. By the time we've done all the videos, it's like midnight. Then we've got to go sit in the car, edit them, try and get them up. I mean, we get home like 5, 6 in the morning, have to wake up like an hour later and go to work. So
wow.
And we were doing that for about initially for about the first 3.5, 4 years until I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to give up my job and concentrate fully on this because I think it can really go somewhere. Because it was building in popularity, you know what I mean? We were doing a lot of we were getting a lot of viral videos, and a lot of people started talking about what we're doing. It was, you could see it growing, subscribers are growing, you know, we're starting to get millions of views and stuff like that. And I was just like, if I don't leave my job now, because a lot of people always talk about that, when did you know when to leave your job? Because remember, I'm working as a surveyor. It's a good job. I've got kids as well. I've got a mortgage to pay. So you're thinking, yeah, I've got to keep that secure. But then you also say to yourself, but if I don't go for this, I may not know what the full potential of this is going to be. And I'm not going to be able to give it all of my, you know, dedication. So yeah, eventually I left and went into it full time. But before that, when I was working, I think the good thing about it is that I was working as a surveyor. So as I said earlier, you're kind of in and out of the office a lot. Because I was a building surveyor, so you had to go around to a lot of properties and see. But a lot of times, when I was going around to properties, I'd have my stuff in the car. So I'd have like a football shirt in the car and stuff like that. So if there was breaking news around Arsenal, for instance, I'd pull over, I'd take my suit off, put my Arsenal top on. I had a little tripod, I could set my phone up on it, and then I'd record a little video. Yeah, Arsenal just done this, blah, 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 right? Send it over to my other friend who'd upload it and then put my suit back on and go back to work.
That's called being smart.
We had to work very smart in that time, you know. I mean, and what I had to do, a lot of times I had to work at work, I'd have to work some late nights because I was a person I always had, in the surveyor work, I didn't want them to think that I'm taking a mick. So I didn't want them to feel that. For starters, they always used to be, they started to see me in videos and stuff like that. And they're like, Robbie, we saw you in a video. Was that you? And I'd be like, oh, yeah, that was me. They go, yeah. They go, so what's this then? And I'd say to them, no, it's not my thing. It's just a friend of mine who's doing this Arsenal thing. And you know, I've been going Arsenal for years. I just help him out. So they didn't know it was my thing. But to try and cover my tracks all the time, I'd have to work some late hours sometimes because I'd be out doing a lot of my stuff sometimes. I then had to catch up so I'd be worked late till 6, 7 o'clock sometimes. They'd be like, oh, Robbie, man, you really dedicated. They didn't know I was catching up. just to make sure that I got everything out. You know? So yeah, it was that. Those were the especially those early times were really tough. But it was good. It was good. You know what I mean? It was still enjoyable because again, when doing the football stuff, it didn't even feel like work, because even now to this day, it don't feel like work because it's a passion. You're following your passion, you know?
Yeah. Do you ever think, I can imagine, given that your brothers and your dads, you were all into football, although you were bugging your mum with the football chat, but, do you ever look back and think about your dads now that you're doing this? Does it sort of almost feel like you're doing it for him in a way?
Yeah, I do. You know what? As I said, all of my arguing and football opinions and all that come from our discussions that we just used to have as a family around. Well, when I say discussions, our arguments we used to have around football, our back and forth. And that all comes from my dad and his passion. So he was alive for some of the period when I was doing this, and he used to see some of the stuff. So he knew it was doing really well. And he really appreciated that. You know what I mean? So, and it all comes down to like that tenacity from. I go way back to, as I said, when they first come to this country, and their bravery, and I try to take that on myself and say, right, I'm going to try to be brave in the things I do as well. If I see something that I feel, I try to do things without fear. That's kind of my motto. I try to do things without fear. I'm like, I will give something a try.
Yeah.
Business wise anyway. You know what I mean? So, but you've got to try and move without fear. You got to be, if you're scared to try new things, you're not going to get very far.
Yeah. And I guess it's, it's the whole point, isn't it? It's one life. And as you said, if you didn't switch, you would probably to this day thinking, I wonder if it would have been something, but now you can go back and, because if it didn't work out, then you were a qualified surveyor. You could always do that. You had something to go back on.
That's exactly what I felt. I said to myself, when I made that step, I said, you know what, even if it don't work out, I'm qualified, I can get a job doing temporary, I'll be all right. So I knew I had that buffer.
That's so cool. And so say for you now, when you look at all of that, what do you think is instilled in you in your kind of working class background? So obviously bravery is your number one, what you were saying, but what other kind of things do you think you carry still to this day?
Well, I think hard work and consistency. Those two things, I think if you don't have those, well, certainly I don't think I could have achieved what I've achieved without that, because, I always say, I always look at it and say, I ain't going to make nobody outwork me. Right. So, I may not, like, even to this day, I come up, in growing my business, and I employ 22 people now, and it's a big company. I've got 2 studios, offices, but still I'm in comparison to some of the companies I come up against, we're small, I mean, because you're making football content, so are BBC, so are Sky, TalkSport, these big organizations. I can't compete with them with money, but what I do have is I have great ideas. We're nimble, we can move quick, and we work hard. And we can, your hard work sometimes can negate all that money, you know what I mean? And your ideas, and the fact that you've got all this new technology now, like, that we can put our content onto these huge platforms like YouTube, where it goes worldwide. So, but you've got to be prepared to work really hard, and you've also got to have that level of consistency.
What an amazing story. And before we wrap up, I've got to ask you one question. Who's your favorite player?
My favorite current player or favorite player?
Oh, now you're opening up a can of worms. Okay, let's do previous and let's do now.
Previously, Thierry Henry, my favorite player of all time. I've had the pleasure to meet him, and since I've been doing this, and really great guy as well, but wonderful footballer. I'd say currently Saka, who plays for us, or Bukayo Saka, youngster. Saw him when he first came into the team. brilliant, brilliant player, got a great attitude, great temperament, and is just a great, great player. And I think in the future, he's going to be one of the best players this country's produced. You know, he's really, really good.
Well, you heard it here first. So thank you so much. It's just such a lovely story. As I said, you know, at the beginning, I'm sure your parents would be super, super proud. And yeah, thank you for sharing it today.
No, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.